Hey everyone, this is Pallavi and today I'm going to show the 24th game of the book Chess The Art of Logical Thinking by Neil MacDonald. This game was played between Kramnik and Wely in Wijk aan Zee in 2001 and the opening played was Grunfeld Defence. This game emphasizes the importance of pawn structure, tactical awareness, centralization of pieces and effective endgame technique. So without further ado, let's begin. So White started with d4, controlling the center and controlling the c5 and e5 square. The queen's bishop and queen are released. The d4 pawn is a stronghold in the center and defended by the queen. Black played knight f6. Developing towards the center, controlling the e4 square, which stops white from playing pawn to e4. Now white played c4. Steinitz suggested that in the early stages of the game, only the d and e pawns should be moved. However, a notable exception to this guideline is the c pawn. Despite being unable to claim the e4 square as initially planned, White discovers an alternate route to expand the center and dominate the d5 square. Now Black played g6. Black is willing to give up some space and time in exchange for setting up a counterattack against White's d4 pawn by fianchetting their kingside bishop. This approach is dynamic and bold, but is also risky, especially when facing strong opponents like Kramnik. Now, White played knight c3. This delayed move is even more effective because the knight patiently waits for the pawn to advance to c4 before occupying its usual central position. Now, Black played d5. Black takes the fight immediately to his opponent with the Grunfeld Defence. White took the pawn, c takes d5. In the queen's gambit, the main goal is to remove the black pawn from d5. Therefore, it's no surprise that White quickly takes the chance to clear the way for the e2 e4 move quickly. Now, knight takes d5. The knight recaptures and clears the diagonal for the bishop, which will shortly appear on g7. Now White played e4. The ideal move. White captures the e4 square, opening up the path for the king's bishop development while simultaneously gaining time by threatening the black knight. Now Black played knight takes c3. Black promptly exchanges their knight without further delay. White took the knight with the pawn, b takes c3. White has successfully established a strong center with pawns on d4 and e4. Yet this advantage will only be meaningful if it can withstand the pressure Black can exert from the flanks. If White's center collapses, it could lead to disaster. Thus, White must demonstrate absolute precision and vigilance in the upcoming moves. Bishop g7. The black bishop on g7 is already looking menacingly at the d4 pawn. Knight f3. In the following moves, there is an intense competition between White and Black. White hastily mobilizes all his pieces to reinforce his center, while Black focuses on targeting the d4 pawn aggressively. Placing the knight on f3 proves to be a strategically advantageous move as it satisfies both developmental and strategic needs. Now, Black played c5. In a counter-attacking opening, ignoring one's pawns can be risky. The c pawn plays a crucial role in Black's attacking strategy here. Opting for nc6 would be a significant mistake as it not only leaves the c pawn blocked but also hinders the black queen from joining the battle via c7 or a5. Now white played bishop to e3 while white strengthens his d4 pawn and clears the c1 square for his rook. Queen a5. Strategy takes precedence over general principles. While it's typically cautioned against moving the queen too soon, in this case it was irresistible to utilize such a powerful piece to target the c3 pawn, the primary defender of the d4 pawn. Moreover, there's no white piece capable of threatening her on the a5 square. Queen d2. White must also utilize his queen, as if rook c1 instead of queen to d2, his center is broken up after c takes d4, as he can't recapture the pawn on d4 with the c pawn because it will be pinned. So knight c6. Additional reinforcements arrive to attack the d4 pawn relentlessly. Rook c1. A strategic placement for the rook. Positioned on c1, it defends the c3 pawn, a crucial support for the d4 pawn, stays out of the range of the black bishop on g7, and will eventually occupy an advantageous position once the c file opens up. An embarrassing blunder would be d5, as it allows the black queen and bishop to suddenly converge on the c3 square, with bishop takes c3 resulting in the loss of white queen. So after rook c1, now black played c takes d4. Thanks to Kramnik's cautious play, black hasn't managed to dismantle white's center. However, black still manages to apply pressure on d4, creating some discomfort for the white king. Now white played c takes d4. The only sensible recapture, as maintaining the integrity of the pawn center is crucial. Now queen takes d2 check. Black exchanges immediately to force the white king to give up castling. King takes d2. The only viable recapture here is with the king, as both knight takes d2 and bishop takes d2 would result in the loss of the d4 pawn to knight takes d4. Since the queens have been exchanged, the king isn't under immediate threat on d2. However, white's situation is still far from ideal. Despite the belief that the king belongs in the center during the endgame, this position is better described as a complex middle game without queens due to the presence of many other pieces on the board. Now black castled on the king side. Black acknowledges that his king is better off moved away from the center. d5. White has successfully managed all his pieces and pawns from the dangerous a1 h8 diagonal. Nonetheless, black remains committed to his opening strategy, dismantling white's center. Rook d8. A good move by black. Rather than move his knight, black exploits the awkward situation of the white king. Now the threat is e6 when the d5 point crumbles. Now white played king e1. The white king retreats to safety, after which the threat to the king, to the black knight actually is renewed. Knight a5. The knight is forced away from its ideal central position, but as compensation, black has pushed the white king back to e1, where it blocks the rook on h1. Now bishop g5. A major part of strategy is preventing your opponent playing good moves. Here white avoids a routine developing move such as bishop d3, in order to stop black attacking his center with e6. Now the pawn is pinned. Now black played another good move, bishop to d7. The most efficient response, far superior to f6, which invites bishop d2, resulting in black's king's bishop being shut in and the king side being compromised. Instead, black disregards the threat to e7 and gears up to contest control over the c file. Now white played bishop d3. White hurries to develop so that he can connect his rooks and not be outgunned on the c file. If bishop takes e7, then rook e8, attacking the bishop. If d6 now, then knight to c6, forcing the bishop to retreat. Then the rook will capture the pawn on e4. Nevertheless, the bishop on g5 has fulfilled its purpose on preventing e7 to e6, even if it cannot directly capture the pawn. So white played bishop d3. Now black played rook d8. Black aims to seize control of the only open file on the board, a crucial avenue for both white and black rooks. Simultaneously, he releases the pin on e7, reintroducing the possibility of e7 to e6. Now white played a good move, which is king to e2. It is vital that the rook on h1 make its presence felt so that the king continues his short range journeys, like from e1 to d2, then e1 to from e1 to d2, then again back to e1 and now on e2. Embarrassing would be rook takes c8 check, then rook takes c8, and then if bishop takes e7, then rook c1 check, when black wins a rook. So king e2, and then black played e6. Frustrated in his attempt to control the c file, black reverts to his initial strategy, targeting white's center. Bishop e3. The bishop didn't stop black from playing e7 to e6, but it did reduce its impact by luring the black rook away from d file. This makes the pawn on d5 much safer. After fulfilling its role on g5, the bishop is moved to a square where it indirectly contests control of the c file. Now black played e takes d5. Black exchanges in order to isolate forever the passed pawn from the other white kingside pawns. E takes d5. Deciding if the pawn on d5 is strong or weak requires careful judgment. On the positive side, apart from its potential to advance and promote to a queen, it disrupts black's piece coordination by blocking the knight's access to c6 and the bishop's influence on e6, where it could attack the a2 pawn. However, it's isolated from the other white pawns and it lacks direct defense from white's pieces at the moment. Yet despite the lack of direct support, it receives indirect assistance from other pieces. The black rooks would want to attack the pawn, but they are tied down by contesting the c file. Additionally, the black knight is stuck on a5 and cannot threaten the d pawn. In the upcoming moves, white showcases the benefits of having a passed pawn while neutralizing its drawbacks. Let's see how he accomplishes this step by step. After e takes d5, now black played b6. Black meets the threat of rook takes c8 check when he must either undevelop his bishop with bishop takes c8 or lose a pawn after rook takes c8, then bishop takes a7. So black blocked it. Bishop a6, a good move. The bishop promptly utilizes the opportunity to occupy the a6 square, aiding white in gaining control of the contested file. Rook d8. Black is forced to give up the control of the c file and wisely chooses to maintain both pairs of rooks on the board. Consider what might have occurred if after rook takes c1. Then rook takes c1. Black targeted the d5 pawn with rook d8 and then rook c7, utilizing the powerful rook on the 7th rank. If bishop g4, then rook takes a7, rook takes d5. Despite capturing the dangerous pawn, black falls victim to a sudden checkmate after rook a8 check, bishop a8, bishop h6. Always be vigilant for back rank checkmates. Even if your opponent has moved one of their pawns in front of their king, back rank checkmates are among the most common types of checkmate. So after bishop a6, black moved the rook to d8 and then white played rook h d1. The king's rook finally joins the game to support the passed pawn. Bishop c8. Black is eager to regain the control of the c file, but the passed pawn on d5 soon becomes menacing as there are fewer obstacles in its way. Bishop takes c8. It's crucial to be ready to sacrifice one advantage for a greater one. Kramnik understands that winning the game hinges on advancing the passed pawn rather than controlling the c file. Therefore, in his next few moves, he willingly relinquishes control of the c file to black to clear the path for the passed pawn. Rook a takes c8 and then white captured with the rook. The multiple exchange of pieces emphasizes white's advantage in the center as the black knight remains stranded on the wing. Rook takes c8. At last, black has control of the c file. But can he restrain the passed pawn? If he's given time, the answer is yes, as he will play knight to b7 and then knight to d6, when the knight will prove an excellent blockader. But white played knight d4, a good move, a remarkable centralization. The plan is to position the knight on b5, enabling it to attack a7, while also providing support for the advancement of the passed pawn. Simultaneously, the black knight is immobilized on b7, can be met with knight c6, threatening knight e7 check to win the rook, and also knight takes a7 to win the pawn, while also controlling the queening square of the pawn on d8. Additionally, the knight move obstructs rook c2 check. What more could one ask for in a move? So now after knight d4, now black played bishop to f8 to exchange or not to exchange. The perpetual dilemma of chess players. Every Grunfeld or King's Indian player hesitates to sacrifice their valuable dark squared bishop for a mere knight. However, the knight on d4 is no ordinary one. As will be revealed, it has been enchanted by Kramnik's magic. Thus, bishop takes d4 was necessary. No matter how difficult, with bishop takes d4, then f5, the black king could then join the battle against the passed pawn. This was black's final opportunity to defend effectively. But black played bishop to f8. Now white played knight b5. The white knight is much better suited to push the passed pawn forward than the black bishop is at holding it back. a6. Black saves the a7 pawn and aims to create pressure by attacking the knight. But an unpleasant surprise awaits him. d6. Passed pawns must be pushed. Because after a takes b5, if a takes b5, then d7, attacking the rook. If rook d8 now, and then bishop takes b6, knight c6, and then bishop takes d8, knight takes d8, and rook d5 contains a double threat of rook takes b5 and rook e5, followed by rook e8 when the passed pawn will cost black his knight if he can stop it at all. So let's say if bishop e7 right now, then rook takes b5. White gains a decisive advantage. Materially, it may not seem too bad for black to have a bishop and knight versus a rook and the two pawns, but his minor pieces are restrained by the passed pawn on d7, allowing the other pawn on a2 to advance quickly. And after here d7 and then rook d8, instead of rook d8, if rook c2 check, then king d3 wins the rook or queens. So after d6, now black played rook c2 check. Black rests his hopes on counter attack against the white queenside pawns. Now white played king d3, the only move. White must attack the black rook with his king, or else snatching the knight becomes feasible for black. Rook takes a2. Black obtains two connected passed pawns, but they are currently too distant to pose any immediate threats to white. Nevertheless, black harbors the expectation that he can sacrifice his bishop or knight for white's passed pawn. Relying on his queenside pawns and offer long-term counterplay. Now white played d7. Nimzowitsch famously said, "The passed pawn is a criminal who should be kept under lock and key. Mild measures such as police surveillance are not sufficient." So white pushed the pawn to d7. Now black played knight d7. It took a major disaster like the opponent queening to finally prompt the knight to move from its dominant position on a5. Knight c3. Another good move by white. In contrast to the slow-moving black knight, the white knight gracefully maneuvers across the board. In this instance, it tactically pressures the black rook to secure a position on d5. Now black played rook b2. If instead rook a3, pinning the knight, then king c2. The white king has slipped away from the d file and the pawn is ready to promote by the support of the rook. So black played rook b2 and now white played knight d5. The knight oversees the entire board along with other threats. Black must consider bishop takes b6, followed by promoting the pawn. Now black played rook b5, attacking the knight. King c2. After the king skillfully retreats, the white rook not only protects the knight but also eyes the d7 pawn and d8 square through it. Bishop to c5. Black fights valiantly. Exchanging bishops would grant him some survival chances thanks to his queenside pawns, even if it means sacrificing a knight to the pawn on d7. Bishop h6, another good move by white. A vital part of Kramnik's winning plan. On h6, the bishop prevents the black king from approaching the passed pawn. Via f8, forces a weakening of black's kingside by introducing checkmating threats, because now the king is trapped on its back rank. So After this, black played f6. Black has to make a hole for his king as he's checkmated after, let's say, if black had played knight d8, then knight f6 check, king h8, rook e1, knight e6, blocking the e file, then d8, queen check. Wow, sacrificing. And then knight takes d8, rook e8 check, bishop f8, rook takes bishop, and it's a checkmate. If instead of knight d8, let's say black is playing a5, then knight f6 check, king h8, d8, queen check, knight takes queen, rook takes knight, bishop f8, and rook takes f8, another checkmate. So black played f6, and now white played knight to c7. The knight attacks the black rook and clears the way for white's own rook to support the queening of the passed pawn. Now here, black resigned. Because let's say if had black played rook a5, then d8, promoting to queen with check, knight takes queen, rook takes knight, check, king f7, rook d7 check, and black has no chance to get his queenside pawns moving before disaster strikes. Like if king g8 right now, then knight e6, rook a2 check, king c3, rook takes pawn on f2, rook g7 check, king h8, knight d8, unstoppable, knight f6 checkmate. And another variation, instead of king g8, if black plays bishop to e7, then bishop e3. Black must allow bishop takes b6, losing one of the queenside pawns and extinguishing any hope of a last minute swindle. If b5, then bishop to c5 wins the bishop. Hence the Dutch GM resigned after knight c7. So from this game, some key principles and lessons learned are: number 1, the importance of pawn structure. The game highlights the significance of pawn structure in determining the strategic flow of the game. Controlling key squares and maintaining pawn chains can greatly influence the course of play. Number 2, tactical awareness. Tactical opportunities often arise from small positional advantages. Being vigilant for tactical possibilities such as exploiting weak squares or creating threats can lead to decisive advantages. Number 3 is centralization. Centralizing pieces such as the rooks and knights can enhance their effectiveness and contribute to a stronger position. The game demonstrates the power of centralized pieces in controlling the board and launching effective attacks. Number 4 is passive versus active play. The game contrasts passive and active play styles. White's proactive approach, focusing on centralization and exploiting tactical opportunities, proves more effective than black's passive defense. Number 5 is endgame technique. In the endgame, accurately assessing material imbalances and understanding pawn dynamics are crucial. The game illustrates the importance of recognizing favorable endgame positions and capitalizing on them to secure victory. Thank you for watching. I hope you like this video as well. Please like, comment, share and subscribe to my channel to show some support. Thank you. See you in the next video. Bye bye.